will you still say that I am good if he should take away, my child, our child? But I had to answer that question. And I remember falling to my knees and saying, yes, Lord, you are still good if you should take away, our child. And I will still love you. I will still worship you. I will still give you thanks.
Wow.
And that totally changed how I began to pray over our kids and how I could still rejoice the way God rejoices over us when we're in full sin, how I could still do that even in hard times. And I remember during seasons, and I didn't know about Jesus, I didn't really know about a God, but I would look at the index and I came across the word weakness. And it took me to 2 Corinthians, and it said like 3 times I asked the Lord to take it away, but he said, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses. For when I am weak, then he is strong.
Yeah.
And I just felt at that moment for the first time that somebody knew me. So then I knew there was some sort of God, and I didn't know Jesus. But then I would just start kind of praying and crying out to a God. And that's kind of how I came to Christ.
I realized what it was I believing, right? And it was almost like, I think the clincher was, this God loved me. I don't think at that time I was thinking this is God's will. It was something that attracted me to Juliana. This is Ed Lin, and she just like was bubbling. Something happened, and she caught my attention, and my heart was racing like crazy. I couldn't hold it together.
Right.
We got married, and
What was it like for the two of you navigating like dating with the faith process? Welcome to the Single Man Podcast, where we delve into candid conversations with Christian men about their journey to faith, advice for their younger selves, and navigating dating. With a heart to reach men from all walks of life, dive into real stories of redemption, growth, and the hope found in following Jesus. I'm your host, Carlton French, a 30-year-old single Christian, and I'm excited for you to listen to this week's episode. Let's jump into it. Hey everybody, it's Carlton French. Welcome back to the Single Man Podcast. I am thrilled for today's conversation with honestly 2 of my favorite people. Ed and Juliana Lin are here today in the flesh. How are y'all doing today?
Good, doing good, Carlton.
Yeah, grateful to have y'all here. And it's been awesome getting to know y'all the last 3+ years through our church in Atlanta, Passion City Church.
Yes.
And just being people that I every time I go, I feel like I always am seeing y'all at church. And when I first started seeing y'all, was an interesting season in my life where I had changed churches to come to Passion and had kind of like a bit of a negative experience at my previous church, and was honestly just like sitting alone in the back of the church. And every week we would just like be sitting next to each other up in the balcony section. And I remember at the time specifically, kind of wanting to be a little isolated and alone and just like focus on the worship and my relationship with Jesus. And in that season was praying specifically for more mentorship from older men in my life. And it just being like funny, I guess, after a few months of sitting next to y'all, I was like, we would just like say hi during the greeting time, like, hey, I'm Carlton, like, hey. And then I was like, maybe I should like ask this guy Ed to get coffee, because he's like always sitting next to me.
the older man, huh?
The older guy, that I was praying for. And so, yeah, it's been great to have Ed as like a mentor in my life the last few years, and keeping him updated on what's happening in my life, and being able to have a bit of a front row seat to how y'all are doing with your marriage and your 4 children. And so just honored that y'all would come on your first ever podcast here today for the Single Man Podcast to talk a little bit about your story, how you 2 met, how you dated, what marriage has been like, celebrating 25 years of marriage this year, which is exciting. And so just honored to have y'all both here. So I appreciate you being willing to come on.
And I do have to say that when we had just started coming to Passion too, when you were, just kind of checking it out, and we thought for sure that you were just a regular and you were greeting us. So that's just you, Carlton. You're so natural.
Thank y'all.
Such a gift.
Thank y'all so much. So let me give a little background on the 2 of you for everyone that doesn't know you, and then we'll jump into some of your stories. So you're currently, Ed is 58, Juliana's 51.
Yes.
And you two met when you were in your 20s in New York City, of all places, which is incredible. And you started dating in your mid 20s and to later 20s for Ed, I guess. And then you got married when Joanna, you were 27.
It's 27.
And Ed, you were 33 when you got married. And you now have 4 children who are all high school age to post college age, which is incredible. And have lived in Atlanta ever since 2000, moving here from New York City before that. You're both fully Taiwanese, which is cool, but you didn't meet, in Taiwan or anything like that. Juliana, you actually were born in Vienna, Austria.
That's right.
Which is really cool. And then moved to the U.S., growing up primarily in Orange County, California. And Ed, born in Taiwan, lived there till you were 6, then moved to Queens in New York.
Yeah.
And then kind of grew up in New York until moving to Atlanta. Anything else I left out you'd want to share on the background for the two of you?
No, you got it.
Yeah. Great summary. That's us.
Okay, great. Well, would love to have you two jump in a little bit maybe with your story, how you came to know Jesus and what he had done for you personally. Was that from an early age or later in your 20s? What was that like?
You want to go first?
Sure. My family were Christians in Taiwan, and it's actually pretty amazing. We always hear about the Reformation in Europe, and then everything went to North America. But the same bunch of people actually later on in the 1800s just went to Asia, and Taiwan was one of the stopping points. And so several generations of my on my dad's side all became Christian
Oh, wow.
through that. Yeah. My mom later became a Christian when she was like 6 years old. And it was through, people she met on the streets and people inviting her. And she's a musician. So where do you get music? In the church, right? And that's how she got plugged into church and became Christian. And later on, my parents met, and the faith gets passed on to us.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. How about you, Juliana?
For me, I didn't grow up Christian. So, in fact, my dad just became a Christian 2 years ago, praise God.
Wow.
So, yeah, so none of my family is Christian right now when I grew up. But it was probably when I was around 5 years old, and I always think of it as sort of Jesus being, the lover that pursues his beloved. And that's really how I see, my story. And I was probably 5, and my parents owned a restaurant, and we lived right above the restaurant. And outside my window, there's a patio where, people were eating and they were talking, and I heard silverware, there was laughing, and I was just drawn to the window. So I went up there and I opened it. And then I remember looking up into the sky, and it was like pitch black, it was velvet. And just scattered across it were like millions of stars, and it was like diamonds. And I remember thinking for the first time, there has to be somebody who created this, and like decades later, I would run across the verse that says, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands, and day after day they pour forth speech, night after night they pour forth knowledge. And it was so true. So that was when I was 5.
Wow.
And then kind of fast forward, when I was in middle school, I just kind of hit a low, and I probably had depression, and I just felt invisible, but there were street evangelists that were just kind of handing out tracts. And one time I was handed a New Testament. And I remember during seasons where I would just kind of flip, and I didn't know about Jesus. I didn't really know about a God. But I would look at the index, and I came across the word weakness. And it took me to 2 Corinthians, and it said like 3 times I asked the Lord to take it away. But he said, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses. For when I am weak, then he is strong.
Yeah.
And I just felt at that moment for the first time that somebody knew me, just intimately knew me, knew what I was going through. And then I knew there was some sort of God, and I didn't know Jesus. But then I would just start kind of praying and crying out to a God. And that was kind of my journey. And then in high school, I met two friends who were Christian, and they would kind of take me to church. And one day, one of these friends says, "Do you want to just pray to receive Jesus?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And so she led me through the prayer, and I accepted Christ. And I thought for sure the heavens were going to open, that there was going to be drums, cymbals, music,
Yeah.
but nothing happened. And I just kind of kept living my life. And I once in a while would go to church, but it was not, I was not following Jesus.
Yeah.
But then I graduated college, so it's been a number of years, and I really was living just how I wanted to live. And but I graduated college. I ended up in New York City, and then I went to a church. And this was all a really God story.
Yeah.
But I ended up at church, and that's where I ended up getting baptized. And that's kind of how I came to Christ.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is that where you met Ed at that
And that's
same
where
church?
I met Ed. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Well, okay. So I have to get a little deeper now
Yeah.
that she set the bar high like this, right? Sure, the faith was passed down to me, but when it finally clicked
Yeah.
for me, like big time click, like life changing, was when I was 28.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It took that long.
Yeah.
Right. Some people are slow learners.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized what it was I believing. Right. And it was almost like, I think the clincher was, this God loved me even when I didn't even know how to reciprocate or anything like that. Right. And that changed how I saw a lot of things, and I remember sitting in church, great music going, and the after the teaching and and learning that, I just went home crying, because I think the burden came off me, that I didn't have to prove myself anymore
Yeah.
to anybody,
Yeah.
and that was really liberating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had kind of grown up in church all the way through 28 and just would go on occasion or whenever,
no,
and then it just like clicked one Sunday for you?
Not occasion. We regular attenders, did all the right things, right? I'll say.
Yeah.
Did all the right things, but then to own it for yourself, to know that this is mine, can't be taken away. I wanted this, age 28.
Okay. That's great. And then what was it like for the two of you navigating like dating with the faith process? Was that something that you had done before you came to know Jesus? And then what was it like when the two of you met one another?
For me, it was always important that you like somebody whose the priorities are the same,
Yeah.
right? And what's the most important thing in your life? Now, there are there are people who I've always been attracted to for one reason or another. But I think at the end, when I had to draw the line in the sand, or actually, all right, I can't just study this anymore. I have to do it, right? Who will that be? And that was very clear to me that this is somebody who has to love the same God that I have, that I love.
Yeah.
Right. And I think because then, if that's a starting point, then that's a little easier for us to say, all right, what's our priorities here? What are our priorities especially when we have disagreements?
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, and I think our situation was such that we were so involved in church at the time, because once I got baptized, I really started serving. I was leading Bible study, I was on the worship team, and I was just very full and satisfied. And also, it was a smaller church too.
Okay.
So I think when we started dating, I just felt we got the green light from really everybody around us, from the pastor, from our friends, and from his family who lived in New York also. So I felt like it was just a little easier to kind of navigate that part of dating, because we did,
You're in community almost. You had the community.
Right. And the circle of people that we were surrounded with all kind of like, we're like, this is great.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was that, I'm just not really familiar personally. Is it common in Taiwanese culture to be Christian, or is there not many Christians that come from that background?
No, it's probably 1 to 2% or something like
Really?
that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Mm. So that must have been interesting being in New York, and like, were there a lot of Taiwanese people even then at the time, or no?
Now, New York City's that melting pot that everybody on steroids,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And you have all kinds of languages, um, all kinds of different people, all kinds of different faith, and you will find your Taiwanese pods.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I wasn't even looking for a Taiwanese community at all.
Okay.
It's just one of those things where like God says, you're going to live here. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It took like a whole month just navigating all over New York City. And he says, you're going to live in Queens. And finally, after like a full month, I could not find an apartment. And thank goodness there were some very interesting places I was looking at. Ended up in Queens where I had met a friend at a dance program I was part of. And right across the boulevard from the apartment that I was staying in Queens was a church, Yeah. So, and it just happened to be a, Taiwanese Mandarin speaking church, English speaking too. So it was,
Wow.
it was such a God thing.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. And then when you two met and then started dating, how did you each pursue guidance from God through the dating process? What was that like for each of you?
I don't think at that time I was thinking this is God's will, right?
Okay.
But there was a nudging. It was a very unexpected thing, right? Because I had my sights on other types of people, my ideal situation, right?
Yeah.
But I just remember one of the times I just had to say there was something that attracted me to Juliana that was out of what I normally thought about. But it turned out to be most important. It was like, what she was doing in church, right? And how she was working with people. And that really turned me on. So that was sort of like that nudging. I didn't hear voices, but it was that nudging that I got, and that confirmation. I remember calling her one time and just I said, "Hi, this is Ed Lin," and she just like was bubbling. And she's, "Oh, hi," and I was like, "Oh, this may be a good thing." She didn't say, "What do you want?" It wasn't like that, and that kind of just, I said maybe I have a chance.
Wow, Juliana's like the most bubbly person I know. I think in the world. So it's a great quality.
Thank you. And I think for me, it's, what I really appreciate at the time is, I was leading a Bible study and he actually joined the Bible study group.
Oh, really?
Now, I think our pastor at the time had kind of told him, go check it out, because I was really such a new Christian. And then I was leading like a Bible study. He's like, I'm probably leading everybody. That's right. But, so he started sitting in, but because of that, and also because we were just, in a church serving all the time, and he also wasn't part of the worship team. And I think I really got to know him before, we started to have all these feelings for each other. Because really, I think the feelings came a little later. But, I got to see the way that, how he participated in the group, what he shared. When somebody in our group was moving, like he totally organized a little caravan. We went and, and helped the person out. And I got to witness the way that he took care of his family, So I saw all of these without having all these emotions, that got mixed in first, which sometimes skews, our perception of somebody when we already have feelings for that person.
Yeah.
So I really got to see that. So that was really a cool guidance, how God sort of navigated that part at least for me, that's how, yeah.
Wow. What was it like, Ed, for you, I guess, even maybe taking the step out of it sounds like y'all had a friendship or, some mutual connections through the Bible study, to take the step, like, let me give her the call and ask her on a date, or why'd you decide to kind of take that step?
I think, well, okay. So something happened and she caught my attention. We have known each other existed
Yeah.
for a few years now, right? but never thought of anything like this. But here's the thing: I was 30, maybe. I was getting older now,
Sure.
and I have this thing like, if you're getting older, you shouldn't be dating for fun anymore, right? Don't lead anybody on. Just be respectful, and don't date for the fun of it anymore. At a certain age, you just have to say this. I hate to put it this way, but you have to step into it, lean in, right, and do it.
Yeah.
All right. So I actually had friends that I said, my brother, a couple of guys I knew, and I said, hey, I got to tell you something. I kind of like this person, and they're like, oh, who's that? And I said, Juliana, and I think one guy he was eating, he dropped his fork. He just, right. And my brother was so cool. He's like, all right, I mean, he's busy. And he just kind of, all right, let's clear the table here. Everybody get out of the room. Let's talk.
Wow.
And they all like affirmed this for me. Yes, this will be a great person for you.
Wow.
Right. And that made it easy for me to say, all right, call. I remember I was on call at the hospital at one time. And that's like, I'm going to call her. And I was really nervous, right? And I was just like, should I call? Should I not? And she probably think it's weird because she probably had not seen this coming at all. And my heart was racing like crazy. Can you believe this? And I picked up the phone.
No, I can believe it.
Right?
I think a lot of guys are listening are probably like, that's exactly how I'm feeling right now.
And I was an adult. I was working. I had people's lives in my hands doing what I was doing, right? And I couldn't hold it together. And I dialed and the reception on the other end was just like gave me a lot of relief, and like, hey, hi. And I don't know if she does that for everybody, but she did it for me, and that's all that mattered.
Yeah, that's great.
For sure. When Ed started to like send a little email, and his emails were so funny. They're these one-liners, like these little one-liners. And so if you know Ed, he's a serious guy. So I knew when he started calling and emailing, I'd be like, something's up,
Wow.
And he wasn't one to like just kind of hang out with a group of people. When you're in your 20s, you're always hanging out. You go with guys, girls, you hang out.
Yeah.
And so he would never. And so when he started, I think when he initiated first, I was like, oh, something's going on for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was that like on your end, Joanna, when he called? You're like, oh, like, let me give him a chance to go on the date, or you were like excited, like you'd been wanting him to do that, or what was that like?
So our first date our first date was actually a premarital seminar. And I had zero idea. I had because he was really actually volunteering and investing in the youth group at the time at our church, which was so awesome, and the young adults too.
Yeah.
And so he would give talks a lot, actually.
Wow.
He would give talks about dating and things like that. And so he advertised it as, oh yeah, I'm going to go check out this conference thing, to find a little bit more about marriage. And I'd be like, oh, how cool. And he's like, well, I paid, and it's for two, so if you want to come. And
it was $25, whether you come with one person or came by yourself.
Oh,
right?
Wow. What a deal.
Yeah. So anyways, so I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And little did I know, when I showed up, I was like, oh, they're all paired up.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was our first date.
But during that thing, it was you do all kinds of exercises, and there was inventory about, all right, what are the priorities for you and what are her priorities, and you just do it on your own, right?
Oh, wow.
And the guy who was moderating it says, can I say his name?
Sure.
His name is Jeff White. He was moderating it. So Jeff, if you're listening to it, thank you. He says, listen, if in your top 10 you got 3 that matches, you should actually consider marrying this person right now.
Really?
Like right now.
Really?
And I think we were there. We had at least 3 or 4, like in a top 5 or 10 that matched up.
And what were these like categories or like topics that you wanted in your marriage or something like that?
Categories of what are the things that you're passionate about.
Oh, wow.
Like yeah.
Okay.
So I highly recommend.
That's wild for a first date. And did you know it was a date at that point or no?
I think I started to realize it was a date at the time. By then, and but I don't know. It was just kind of, I had never heard of a premarital seminar. I didn't grow up. Nobody talked about this stuff. And
right.
So I was sitting there, and I just found it so interesting. It was actually like kind of fun as I'm answering all these questions.
But the girl who goes along with you,
Mm.
it goes along with it. That's the person you should marry. right?
That's good.
She was willing to go along with on this silly ride with you.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the person.
That's good. So now y'all went from the first date. How long did you date in total before you got married?
It was like 8 months. It was only like 8 months.
I
No,
think
was
it
it
was
6 months?
It was less than a year,
Okay.
right? And again, I was older, and I just didn't think that we do it or don't,
Yeah.
right? If you tell me, Ed, this is not for you. Now, she did try to push me away. She's like, "Wait, this is going way too fast for
Oh,
me,"
yeah.
and rightfully so.
Yeah.
And I kind of didn't respect that. I kept being in front of her, being present in
Ed.
one way or another,
Yeah.
and had my way, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So
then,
I had to move fast, right? I had to be efficient about it.
Sure.
The courtship had to get turned on. And the other thing, she was dating somebody at the time, right? A great guy. And when I saw that she started dating this person, I just had to accelerate the process.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were like dating someone, Juliana, when you went to the seminar or no?
Well, I think we actually were on hold for a bit.
I see.
So
Okay.
it wasn't,
Okay.
we were kind of on hold for a bit. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow.
I think she wanted it. It's like, I need to clear my head. Like too many guys, like,
I see.
just calling my number, right?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Which, I don't know, if I had to do it again, I wish I had given her a little bit more space. But I think that's a certain point for a guy that you have to woo the other person, and if that's still a cool word to use, right?
There you go.
You gotta show that whoever you're in love with, that you're willing to kind of sort of invest a little bit more effort and go fight for it a little bit.
Fight for it. Yeah.
I mean, don't get crazy,
Right.
but yeah, I mean,
Just be intentional. Like show you're really interested.
don't be a stalker, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, show that your intention is, like your intention is there. You're not just. It's not casual.
Yeah. Okay. And then you two got married in New York, and then moved to Atlanta in 2000. Right.
We got married, and for work, 8 months later, she came down with me, and we had certain options that we could have done. We could have gone to California. That's where she grew up.
Yeah.
And Atlanta was a great place to train, and probably one of the world's medical capitals for what I do.
Yeah.
And
what do you do, Ed?
I'm a surgeon.
Okay.
I'm a surgeon. Yeah. So I came down for additional training.
Yeah.
And I said to Juliana, "Would you want to come to Atlanta?" And she didn't say, let me see. Now she has preferences of where she doesn't want to go right now. But at that time, she said, "I'll go wherever you go." And that was it.
Yeah. That's awesome. So 25 years of marriage now. Congratulations. Incredible. Probably not the norm, right? What is it? What statistics? Like 50% of marriages end in divorce, and to make it 25 years of marriage is probably a very small percentage of people that make it that far. So incredible that you two have had your marriage as strong as it's been for that long. If you could go back and talk to yourself while you're kind of in that dating season with one another, what would you maybe go back and tell yourself then, or to an audience of single men and women who are trying to navigate dating now? What would you tell them?
Well, for me, I mean, it's amazing, 25 years. I mean, but we've definitely had, rough times too.
Sure.
But if I could go back and tell myself now, I would say, I would tell myself that, there's not a single thing that you can take back, words that you say, because I've definitely, during the times when, I've been angry and upset, I've definitely had said things that I can never take back. So that's something I would go back and tell myself that, you can't take back the things that you say. And so that's something to really think about. And I mean, I was, so you're young, you don't think, and you're impetuous and you do things, but there's some things you just can't take back, even though there's a lot of forgiveness.
Sure.
And mercy, but it's there, it's been done. So,
yeah,
for sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
How about you, Ed?
My take on that is for the younger self, right?
Yeah.
Get to know who you are in terms of what grounds you, what makes you get up in the morning, and when nobody's watching,
Mm.
what's the important thing for you,
Yeah.
right? Get to know that, and part of doing that is actually get out there and meet people, but build friendships. Um, Somebody that you meet once, then you exchange numbers, and you probably do a little text and call, and uh, you know, be there in person,
Mm.
right? Be in these gatherings in person, and that way you kind of find out where your strengths and your quirks are. And many of these people shine spotlights on you, warts and all, and whatever's even beautiful about you, right? And then you kind of that kind of affirms who you are. So you're not like inventing you as a person in your own vacuum, which most of the time it's probably wrong,
Mm.
right? And let other people see who you are for what you are, and maybe somebody will click with you.
Yeah.
I think that's important. That's what I would tell the younger person.
Yeah. It's good. Sounds like you were doing that through your church community and you were plugged in with
You
both of
know,
you
I,
were, right?
I have probably have more schooling than I really need to, right? And so my profession and career was just always like in lockstep. You just had it ate up all your life, so you didn't have much free time to say, all right, tonight I'm going to go here, tomorrow I'm going to go there. There was no social calendar in that sense. Social calendar was like, all right, in between work and sleep,
Yeah.
what do I have time for?
Mm.
Right. So I did a lot of church life. And so that also meant a lot of my friends were all in that church circle and work circle. Those were my buds, my pot of people.
Yeah.
So I didn't do as much as what other people would do, but you got to do that. Otherwise, you can't find out what you're like. Now, when you're at work and you spend 120 plus hours a week in there, there's a good chance that now that's your social circle, right? And they actually highlight all your strengths and your weaknesses for you.
Yeah.
But it's always good to kind of be in different environments to kind of to kind of find out who you are and what makes you tick.
Yeah. It's good. What would you two say, being married 25 years now, the biggest blessing has been being married, and then the biggest challenge has been, just like practically speaking, to an audience of single men and women?
Yeah. You want me to go first? Yeah. Okay. I think for me, I think the challenge and blessing are actually almost they're kind of like intertwined. They're
Oh,
the
yeah.
same.
Okay.
Yeah. I think for me, it's really like realizing that our differences are actually good, and I think because we do have, there's some things that are different. We grew up differently, the way we do things, the way we say, it's just so different, and I think for a long time I kind of fought it, and then it took me really a minute to realize, I am actually the best version of myself, because of Ed, and the way that I'm learning from him, and how he does things, and to glean from it versus seeing that it is something that we continue to butt heads about.
Wow.
Yeah. So for me, that's just been like, and that's been the deepest blessing to see that.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we've had you giving statistics about marriage and
Yeah.
divorce, right? We've have had rough patches, and rough patches may be very recent too, right?
Sure.
And I wouldn't be surprised if next month we have a huge rough patch that just nearly wrecks us. I think we've been near those points. We've brushed against those, bumped against that glass, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm glad somebody stepped in or just kind of stopped. You know, um, I'm glad there were people who stepped in for us,
Yeah.
intervened, or somebody stepped in and just kind of put a little bit more clarity in my head about why are we in? How did this whole thing start? Why are we? How do we become together? Right? So yeah. So we will have. I think everybody who gets married will have rough patches,
Yeah.
and do you want to act on the craziness? Do you want to act on the crazy thoughts? Now, sometimes I do feel like, yeah, maybe you just have to, because the hurt is just too much, right? Um, it's a blessing that we haven't been to that, the hurt where it's like irreversible,
Sure.
right? But yeah, I think we've come close to these hard moments, and I think this is where it's important, right? What was, you go back to that list, and we saved that list
Oh, yeah.
somewhere,
Wow.
so that, and I think I've gone back to it more than you have, right? Just to kind of remind myself, how did we get into this? How did we come together like this and say we're going to make a pact, and until one of us dies, right? How did we get into this? And it just helps me remind myself, like, all right, fine, this is what we have to do. I think, sorry, I think the blessing, there's endless blessings. I think Juliana said it best. I think it's important to me to realize, it's taken me so many years to understand how to navigate these things, is there's got to be a lot of give. This is not a war or transaction where winner takes all,
Yeah.
right? This should not be like, this is not work where there's going to be, I'm going to have to win this all, be number one in the market. This is not that, right? This marriage is actually, as Juliana said, we become the best versions of ourselves by being together and kind of, polishing each other a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's actually an important part of this marriage investment. So you have to kind of yield a lot. That's a hard word for today, right? I was trained to be a winner, top in my game, be number one, but this is not that. And so that has to be said to us over and over again. This is not a transaction.
Yeah.
It's not winner takes all. This is about, you have to yield a lot, forgive a lot. I think good thing about her is all the things that I'm probably going to be ashamed to talk about to anybody is, she knows, but then she's in a way kind of forgotten them. I don't know if she's forgotten or forgiven, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with either one. Just let it go. She's not holding that against me or over me, right? Whereas for me, I've got an elephant's memory, and that I have to go back to myself. So it's like, whoa, you know what? She's forgiven me about these things. God's forgiven me, and why am I holding these things in my head? Why am I playing that stupid tape in my head?
Yeah, that's good. It's good.
Yeah, he does have an elephant's memory. It's a curse and a blessing. But yeah, I think I do tend to just forget a lot easier, But I was just going to add that, with the challenges, one of the big lessons is actually that we're in community. We have a community group. We go to church on Sundays. All of that kind of lifts you up to a different kind of, above yourself and above, whatever we're going through. It really does. So it's so important to it's not just us two all the time, that there's actually a whole community around us, that's supporting us. And they prayed, with us through a lot of these valleys.
I was going to ask what's your faith meant through navigating some of the difficulties of marriage? Has that been really important through more of the difficult patches?
I think that's the only thing, having, so if you have two people, right?
Yeah.
Very opposite, priorities. It's kind of hard to say, all right, what's our starting point? And if you can always go back to what your origin is, what's the starting point here? What's the most important thing to you? And then you can start working down that chain, right? And I think, so when you're looking for that person to marry, make sure you kind of align those two. And it doesn't matter if this person is tall, short, skinny, whatever, they can be any color, any shape, anything.
Yeah.
Different hobbies, right? But if you have that one anchor that actually is your number one thing, that you're willing to give up everything for that one anchor, then that's easy for you to say, all right, this is our starting point. And then we always have to go back to that starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for you being the faith in Jesus or in your relationship with him, was that anchor point?
Oh,
that is our anchor point.
It's definitely mine. I mean, without Jesus, I really would have given up a long time ago, because I mean, if you knew me then. I mean, I'm somebody who I give up so easily. Like I don't finish things. I give up. It's too hard. And I just kind of like walk away, you know, and there've been several times where I thought like, oh my gosh, am I in the wrong marriage? Did I marry the wrong person? I had questions like that, you know, when things got really hard.
Yeah.
But it really was, you know, scripture that's, you know, just kind of anchored me. It was the body of Christ. It was going to church and listening to the sermons and worshiping, you know, that just taught me to the steady, keep steadfast, you know. Yeah.
Wow. Really good.
I think practically speaking,
Yeah.
it usually plays out this way, right? The music, great lyrics, great music. So what are you going to listen to kind of put you in that mode, right? We can listen to podcasts of all varieties now. We can read all kinds of self-help books or
Right.
go to any kind of seminars to improve me and myself and go through any kind of coaching you want to, right? So what is the content that's going to help you through these things, right? I think counseling is always an important thing for us. A Christian counselor is kind of helpful. I think it's very helpful, actually.
Sure.
And so praying, doing letting the words of the Bible speak to you, right? And a lot of times the music is actually really important, very healing in many ways, right? If somebody's had a hard day, they just have to have that playlist.
Yeah.
What's on your playlist that's going to help you? And those practically, I think that's how a lot of times it plays out.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. And I think one of the verses, pivotal moments I remember when I realized like, you know, I'm not giving in, you know, I'm not giving up. I just remember thinking, was it in James? I can't remember the scripture where it says, you know, submit to God, you know, and then, you know, submit to your husbands, but first submit to God. And I remember that moment where I just kind of was like, oh my gosh, you know, I need to submit to God. And that really changed sort of how, you know, I was viewing our situation and, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the other way, now that you've said that, it reminds me of just when I said the word yield, right? Sometimes you just say, you know, okay, we'll do it your way.
Yeah.
And I don't have to die on this stupid hill, right? And is it any better when I win? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I haven't seen, there are times I think I won, and boy, was I the biggest loser, right?
Wow.
So I think the yielding a lot, forgiving, I gotta say she's probably forgiven me more than I've ever forgiven anybody, right? So you just have to do that a lot and do it repeatedly until it becomes like really natural. And you know, I think when she's forgiven me this much, I have this trust. You know, it's like, wow, she's not out to be the winner here, right? She's not out to take it all.
Yeah.
And so
y'all are on the
that's
same team. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing to realize. But that's how it plays out practically.
Yeah. It's good. What I'd love to have you talk on, you know, the blessing and challenge of having kids. You all have been blessed to have 4 children, and I've been fortunate to meet all of them, and they're incredible. So we'd love to have you touch on that, especially nowadays. I feel like it's not super common to have that big of a family, having 4 children. So what's that been like, and what's been the biggest blessing and challenge of having kids?
Yeah.
I think kids are great. I do recommend you getting it earlier so that you're not raising a teenager when you're getting older and older, right?
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. It's that the timing is, there's never a perfect timing, right? To have kids. But I think having kids are great. I think it turns bad when you're trying to impose your ways on your kids, right? Without you living it out.
Yeah.
You know, I think the worst situation is when you like, okay, these are my desires or my personal wish list and some of them I haven't even accomplished. And I'm trying to push them on my kids, right? Now there are paths or values that you need to instill in your kids, because if you don't do it, I think somebody else will, or some other platform will do that. And so what are the important things?
Yeah.
Right. And so having our 4 kids, we were like, let's have another if we could, you know, because it's,
come on, number 5.
Yeah, I mean, I really think the biggest challenge, you know, for me was, finally realizing and understanding that the kids do not belong to me, to us. They belong to, they belong fully to God.
Wow.
And I remember when we were going through a really just, really storms, and I remember I was doing my quiet time in the living room, and just this very overwhelming question came up, and it was asking me, will you still say that I am good? Will I still, say God is good if he should take away, my child, our child? Will I still worship him? Will I still say that, I love you, God? And then it came to that, where I had to answer that question. And I remember falling to my knees and saying, yes, Lord, you are still good if you should take away, our child. And I will still love you. I will still worship you. I will still give you thanks.
Wow.
And that totally changed how, how we began to pray over our kids and how I could still rejoice the way God rejoices over us when we're in full sin, how I could still do that even in hard times. And and that really changed. And the blessing for sure is when I begin, when we begin to see little nuggets of where they're owning the faith that they grew up in. It's no longer our faith, that we're trying to impose on them, but it's like all of a sudden they're like, they're inviting some friends to church, or, one of our kids is thinking about, starting a Bible study, and that's just to me the sweetest part. Like, yes, that's the blessing I see.
I think for the kids, when we see them mature, right, and then start doing things in their flavor, right? Sure, there's a little of whatever we've done passed down to them, and they are actually just acting it out on their own time, and with their own ways, and their hearts are reflect somebody bigger than all of us, right? And that when we start seeing that, we're like, some of the things they say, some of the things they do, we just look at each other and say, if I die now, I'll be just fine. Right? Have they graduated? No. Have they made their first million? No way. They're not even close, right?
Right.
When we see that, we're like, if they got this down, everything else is going to be fine. Whatever their future relationships, whatever they do, if they're anchored to this, then they're okay. And we're seeing that now, right? And there were times where we didn't think it was possible with the kids, but that's probably because I was looking at them through my own lens of, oh, this is the bar I wanted you to do, and you didn't meet it, right? But when we start seeing what all four of them, what they say, what they do, and it reflected a higher order, definitely a higher power than what I have been able to do for them, and we're like, honey, we can just die right now. We'll be just fine, right? Yeah.
That's great. And all four of your kids there, are they single or dating? Do you know?
They're all single.
All single. Okay. Yeah. So this question, as we get toward wrapping up here, I wanted to ask you if you could go back and talk to yourself.
Well, they're single. We have no idea what if they're dating.
We think they're single.
We think they're single. I should say that. Sorry, go ahead.
But this is good. This is a good thought, though. So if you could go back and talk to yourselves while you were still single, before you even had met one another, or let's say you could talk to your four kids who are all in the high school, the post-grad age range, which is the majority of our audience is kind of in that age range there, trying to navigate, being a single man. What would you give as encouragement to them, or encouragement if you could go back and talk to yourselves in that season?
I think I said it earlier, find out who you are, right? And part of that is actually being in community. Yeah. I got to say the virtual social media thing is not the right way, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to live with that person, sit next to them, flesh to flesh, the kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
All right. But I think, I forgot what I was going to say, but you do those things. You find yourself. I think being part of church life, knowing who your God is and your relationship to that person, it's actually the best thing for you, because then everybody has to have a frame of reference to or what's important to you. Live by some kind of playbook, right? And even if you think you came up with your own playbook in your head, right? So this is me. It came from somewhere.
Mm.
There's some influence that went into it.
Yeah.
And so make sure you know what your playbook is, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things Juliana always tells the kids is make sure you respect that person. Like show respect to that person. Don't do anything to them that's going to hurt them, right? And I think that's really one of the important things that I will always tell my kids or the younger person. Do what you want. You can make your mistakes, own up to it fast, but do things that shows that you respect that person, and you hold them to in reference.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I think if I could go back and advise my single self, it would be, you're right where you're supposed to be. You are right where you're supposed to be. Because I just remember there's seasons where I'm just like itching to get out of this and that, or I think this is not right, or I'm pushing the door when the door won't open. That kind of situation, and only to realize later in retrospect when I look at my life now that, oh my gosh, he just moves. He will move you when he's ready to move you,
Wow.
yeah. So I'm not always constantly fighting or just getting anxious or being upset if something doesn't happen or not getting that job when I really wanted to change jobs. And I mean, God just works it all out.
Yeah.
You're right about that. I still have trouble with that part, right? It's like always want to be something that I'm not, or want my kids to be something that they're not. And they are exactly where they need to be right now. And, you know, so yeah, you're right. I'm still trying to learn that one.
That's good. Continuing to polish one another even now.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great. Okay, last question, and then we'll wrap up with this. So, toward the end of the 52 episodes of the Single Man podcast, I'm wanting to really try to reach single men that don't currently know Jesus, or they don't know much about faith or the Bible, church. They've never been. So, I'd love to have you leave a takeaway maybe for that single man or woman who's listening to this episode that doesn't have a personal relationship with Jesus now. And then also a large portion of our audience are Christians that do have a relationship with Jesus, but they're single and they're trying to navigate that season of being single, and maybe some of that desire or yearning, like if I could just have what Juliana and Ed had, then I'll be complete. If I could just find that person, what advice would you give to those two groups of people?
Yeah. I think for the single person who doesn't know God or Jesus, and I would say that, you've been listening to the podcast or this episode that, already, God is in pursuit of you. God is in pursuit of you. Just like the lover who pursues his beloved, he's in pursuit. And I did not know Jesus at all. I didn't know God, but I started to have conversations with God. Just start that conversation, even with all of your questions and all of your doubts. Just start talking.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, for sure. And then for the person who does know Christ, and my advice or what I would say is, fall in love with Jesus before you fall in love with anyone else, because there is no one in the world who knows you more than the Creator himself, who knit you together in your mother's womb, who knows your thought before you even think it, who knows a word before it's even on your tongue.
Yeah.
And sometimes even in marriage, sometimes you're sitting next to the person and you feel like the loneliest person in the world. That happens for sure.
Wow.
And so when you are in love with Jesus, your desires, your longings, your wants, your shortcomings, all of that he fulfills, because you won't really ever find it in the other person, no matter how wonderful and amazing the spouse is, So for sure, fall in love with Jesus first.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joanna.
She's up here. I'm gonna have to bring it down here for me.
Come on.
It's kind of. I think I'll put it this way: if I had a son or a daughter who's looking at somebody, interested in somebody, right? And these are the expressions of being Christian, even if you're not. That can be a very common thing that everybody is given, right? And these are the things I want to see in that person. One, are you respectful of those people who aren't like you, who don't have as much? Are you the forgiving type? Are you willing to say, hey, it's okay, let that go. It's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Willing to yield. It's not always my way, or I want to see that person. And the last thing is I want to see a generous person, somebody who's willing to give it away and financially and their time and their efforts and their advice. They're willing to kind of be there for somebody else, right? And those are features that I think that shows that this person is not out to win it all.
Yeah.
Right? You're
Yeah.
not just a conquest, and that willing to kind of give their part of their lives to you. And that's the person I want to see. So if you even if you don't go to church, you don't follow Jesus, God's not in your life. One day, hopefully, you'll find it soon. But these are the features that I think are really in high demand.
Yeah.
Right, for people who want to get together.
That's great.
That's what I'll say.
And then someone that currently does know Jesus, would you have the same things that you'd say to look for?
Yeah, if you know Jesus, it's actually going to be always the starting point, right? When our marriage is spiraling out of control, going through tailspins, like, all right, where's my anchor? Where do I look? Where's the up and down when the plane's going, spiraling and turning?
Yeah.
And that's a huge anchor. Now, when you're a Christian, there are many different expressions of, people who have God in their lives, right?
Sure.
Some people are the generous type. Some people are the teaching type. Some people are the service type. It doesn't matter. You have all these gifts that you have. And
that just made me think of, I think you were the first person to tell me, Ed, that you thought I had the gift of administration.
Oh, did I?
Maybe you were doing this like spiritual gifts thing at the time, but I was like, I looked into that. I was like, I think I do have that.
Well,
that's great.
Carlin, you do. You organize people, and I think don't always leverage that gift for something bigger than us, right?
Yeah,
for sure. So there are different expressions of these things, right? And that's actually nicer to see. It's like, all right, it's not just, all right, these are qualities of somebody with integrity, right? But it's more like, okay, what are you going to do with this? Can we do this together, right? And I think for people like you, it's even better when you know that, all right, I really like this person who loves the same Lord, who as I do, and we also share this part of our ministry or work in church together. You know, that's actually the coolest thing if you can do that.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. Really great advice, and love y'all's story, and appreciate y'all coming on and being vulnerable. And I know y'all were praying about coming on, and God giving you peace about doing that. So just believing that He's going to use it in mighty ways to reach single men, specifically around the world, that don't know Jesus. And just grateful for y'all's friendship and mentorship in my life, Ed.
Thank
and
you,
excited to continue to see what the future has in store for y'all.
Yeah, we love you. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlton.
Really appreciate everybody being here today, listening to Ed and Juliana's story. If anything stuck out to you, would love for you to leave a comment down below on YouTube or Spotify, or send me a DM on Instagram. The Single Man Podcast would love to share any feedback with the two of y'all. And I hope it encouraged you. If you know anybody that you think would be encouraged by their story, would love for you to share it with them. Send them a text, tell them to check out the Single Man Podcast. And I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. This has been Carlton French. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Single Man Podcast. If someone you know would benefit from this week's episode, I'd love for you to text them the link and invite them to listen. You never know how a simple invitation could change someone's life. We'll be back next Friday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, with a new episode. Until then, check out the video version of the podcast on YouTube, and you can engage with us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.